Hey guys, so there is no court today in the Edrick Faust case. We heard a little bit yesterday. It seems like Mr. Cruz's wife is in the hospital. So my guess is that's what's happening today. So I hope everything's okay over there. I don't know what's going on with Friday, but I haven't heard that there's any plans to not hold court Friday. So plan to have court tomorrow, and I'll let you know if that changes. But I did want to do a quick little video to let you know that news and that there were 2 new filings on the docket. Well, sort of new. So down here we have first amended notice of appeal filed. We mentioned the other day that Cruz is appealing the contempt order and filed a motion for supersedeas bonds while he appeals that contempt order with the Supreme Court of Georgia. This amended notice of appeal goes into a longer list of things that they want to be included in the record. And next is a subpoena for Brenda Swinney. So this isn't the first subpoena for Brenda Swinney. And here this is posted, it's stamped February 10th, 2026, but it says the service was January 7th by a process server at 4:30 p.m. and summoning for the 26th day of January. So I'm not exactly sure why this was posted today, but we've had a lot of questions about who's the defense going to call. Unfortunately, that defense witness list, I can't view it. It's not viewable, even though the full jury list with names is viewable, which I think is weird. But I thought it'd be a good time, since there's no court anyway, to revisit opening statements and see what was said about Brenda Swinney. I'm going to jump over to a brief that the defense filed on November 13th, just documenting different due process deprivations. And as it relates to Brenda Swinney and the court's handling of issues relating to Brenda Swinney, on November 11th, 2025, Ms. Brenda Swinney was served by statutory overnight mail via FedEx with a subpoena to appear before the Honorable Court on November 13th, 2025. Upon the start of the court proceedings, Ms. Swinney was not present. This is significant because the hearing in which Ms. Swinney was subpoenaed for was beginning. When the Honorable Court was asked to enforce the subpoena, it was advised that undersigned counsel had attempted to speak with Ms. Swinney, and despite advisement that Mr. Faust needed Ms. Swinney to put forth his defense in said hearing, the Honorable Court denied enforcement of Mr. Faust's subpoena in violation of a Sixth Amendment right to the compulsory process and his Sixth Amendment right to present a defense. Thankfully for Mr. Faust, Ms. Swinney appeared under the authority of the subpoena. Thus, this point is presented for illustrative purposes. So in other words, yes, Swinney did end up showing up and satisfied the subpoena, but the court had already said that they weren't going to do anything to enforce that subpoena. So if Swinney didn't end up showing up, that would have been it. On November 13th, 2025, during Mr. Faust's motion for exclusion of other acts as evidence, the Honorable Court precluded Mr. Faust from asking questions relevant to the credibility of Ms. Swinney, which went to the heart of Mr. Faust's defense that the state did not meet its burden of other acts evidence by showing the preponderance of evidence that the alleged other acts occurred. When Mr. Faust requested an opportunity to proffer said questions into the record, he was denied the opportunity for same. Thus, Mr. Faust files said questions into the record in regard to his opposition to the state's motion to admit other acts as evidence under OCGA 24-4-403 and OCGA 24-4-413. The first set of questions were for the purpose of showing that Ms. Swinney lacked any information into Ms. Baker's death before it was implied that Mr. Faust was responsible for the cold case death. So during these interviews, law enforcement is leaking the information, contaminating the witness's actual personal knowledge by leading them with the information. The questions that Mr. Faust would have proffered to Sergeant Black in support of that proposition are as follows. So this is what the defense wanted to get into at this hearing, but they were denied the opportunity to do so. Sergeant Black, we've agreed that the GBI explained to Ms. Swinney that they were at her home to talk about a cold case. Is that correct? That's one example. Before it was implied that Mr. Faust was responsible for the cold case death, do you recall asking Ms. Swinney, do you have any idea why we'd want to come talk to you about a cold case? Another example. Ms. Swinney's response was, not me, anyone but me. Ms. Swinney was then asked, is there anyone that comes to mind, maybe somebody? Ms. Swinney's response was, not Edrick Faust, is that correct? Another example. Ms. Swinney's response was, but I don't have an idea of who. Is that correct? Another example. She was directly asked, was she dating someone back in 2001? Correct? She was asked if the name Edrick Faust sounds familiar, correct? You would agree that at the mention of Mr. Faust's name, that Ms. Swinney did not say that he sexually assaulted Ms. Swinney or broke in or set someone's home on fire. And then it's back to argument. Again, the purpose of these questions were to show Ms. Swinney expressed to law enforcement that she lacked any information in Ms. Baker's death before it was implied that Mr. Faust was responsible for the cold case death. The next set of questions that the Honorable Court precluded from asking were for the purpose of showing after Ms. Swinney was told that Mr. Faust was responsible for Ms. Baker's death, she claimed God gave her information about the 2001 death. The first question in that section was as follows. So the example here. So again, this is not, the issue here is that this is what the defense wanted to be able to ask during this hearing that would have gone to making the decisions about can the state get into this stuff by calling Brenda Swinney. And according to opening statements, the defense was under the impression that the state was going to call Brenda Swinney and ask them about some of these things. So they couldn't ask at this hearing things like, Sergeant Black, you would not disagree that after Ms. Swinney was told that Mr. Faust was responsible for Ms. Baker's 2001 death, she responded, something just popped up. It's like God gave me something. Oh, it jumped. Where were we? Next example. Ms. Swinney told investigators, I'm very biblical, y'all. Is that correct? And then argument, it says the next set of questions that Mr. Faust was precluded from asking were for the purpose of showing that Ms. Swinney claimed that Mr. Faust attempted a 2001 theft and arson, potentially involving Ms. Baker. The questions in that section were as follows. Example 1, Sergeant Black, Ms. Swinney told investigators that this young girl, I don't really know who she was, I don't know, and later stated, I believe she's a student, I'm not sure, I don't know, correct? Ms. Swinney also stated, but I know that I think he went and stole a TV and burned the house across the street from the little apartments over there. Did Ms. Swinney also imply to you that the house was in Deer Park? She stated she can't remember exactly what Mr. Faust did and advised she knew it was a TV or something was stolen out of that girl's house. Sergeant Black, you then asked her, did Mr. Faust tell you that information? And her response was not yes, correct? Her response was, if I had to say, I would have to say he had to tell me because I knew too much. Is that correct? This is after she told you that God had just gave her something and that she was very biblical, correct? The next set of questions, as the previous set of questions, go directly to the credibility of Ms. Swinney's allegations. The purpose of the next section of questions was to establish that after Ms. Swinney was told that Mr. Faust was responsible for Ms. Baker's death, Ms. Swinney began to agree to anything suggestive of Mr. Faust's involvement in Ms. Baker's death. Mr. Faust was only allowed to ask 2 questions out of that section. Please note, this is not a verbatim presentation, this is from memory. Thus, the record would be the best source for accuracy. The questions were asked as follows. So these aren't examples, this is what they got to ask. Sergeant Black, would you have any reason to disagree that after being informed that Mr. Faust was responsible for the 2001 cold case death, you would usually first mention things that Mr. Faust had done, and Ms. Swinney would subsequently agree? Another question. You asked Ms. Swinney, did he go over there and steal stuff, or is that kind of his thing? And Ms. Swinney responded, I believe he did. I don't know for sure because he lived over there. That you then asked, when he would go steal stuff, would he break into the places and steal? And Ms. Swinney's response was that he had to. Correct? The next question you asked Ms. Swinney was, stealing stuff is sort of something he does though, right? And Ms. Swinney's reply was, yes. Sergeant Black, you told Ms. Swinney that Mr. Faust was probably good at it, and her response was, probably was very good at it, correct? Sergeant Black, you asked Ms. Swinney, did he rape her? And Ms. Swinney responded with, he probably did, correct? Sergeant Black, you asked Ms. Swinney, when his responses were violent, were they just slightly violent or did he go over the top? And Ms. Swinney responded with, he's over the top, is that correct? The purpose of said set of questions were to establish that after Ms. Swinney was advised that Mr. Faust was a suspect in the 2001 cold case, she began agreeing with the suggestions of law enforcement in their leading questions. This goes to our witness credibility argument that Mr. Faust was deprived of. Mr. Faust provided the Honorable Court with a brief objecting to the state's proffer of evidence in Mr. Faust's November 13, 2025, Other Acts hearing, despite its pursuance to Benford v. State, which advised that if counsel objects to other evidence being submitted via proffer, it is reversible error to allow same. The Honorable Court denied Mr. Faust's motion. The Honorable State acknowledged the objection and did present evidence via traditional means. Thus, although the denied objection was moot, We present this document for illustrative purposes. Respectfully submitted. Again, this was the 13th of November, 2025. So they weren't able to get into all of this, but I do think it's interesting that the state is keeping the record clean here and possibly avoiding a reversible error when the court was just like, nope. So all of this. And now imagine going into opening statements believing that the state is going to call Brenda and try to introduce all of these things that you couldn't proffer or fight against. And then you say it in opening. You try to get ahead of this stuff in opening. We're going to take a look at that. Let's see what happened in openings.
Particularly, the state will call Miss Brenda Swinney. And you will learn in this case that the state, Miss Elizabeth Bigham, she will testify that she's reviewed every single document in this case file. And based on her review of that information, what you will learn is that Mr. Faust did not stay at 350 Cooper Road. Mr. Faust actually stayed in Knollwood Apartments with his girlfriend, Miss Brenda Swinney, at the time. And this is information that the state has had before today and during the entire pendency of this case. So what happened? That's the question that we're here to figure out. What happened with Ms. Baker? This is Ms. Baker shortly before she passed.
All right, and then he's going to move on. And then a while later in opening statements, he goes into the Brenda Swinney issue.
The state's evidence includes, we mentioned the DNA, but what they also intend to introduce, and this is the question you have to ask yourself with anything they introduce, how does this support that Mr. Faust is responsible for death, burglary, rape, Ms. Baker? They intend to bring in a long-term girlfriend of Mr. Faust by the name of Miss Brenda Swinney. Okay? Now, the thing is, Ms. Swinney and Mr. Faust were in a long-term relationship. They are not strangers. Okay? The state won't present any evidence of strangers coming in saying Mr. Faust broke in their house and did these terrible things to him. But what Ms. Swinney will testify to, you may get 3 different things because I believe we've gotten 2. Okay? Police go to Ms. Swinney's house when Mr. Faust is first arrested. The news is broken. Right? She's getting phone calls. You'll see this if they present it. She's getting phone calls from people saying, hey, did you I don't know what I'm assuming. Pretty much she ends up saying that, I just got a phone call that Edrick has been arrested. So what happens is law enforcement goes to her house, and the way they find her, based on what the officer says, is police reports. Mr. Faust and Ms. Swinney had a tumultuous relationship. They fought a lot. Okay, there are police reports of Ms. Swinney calling the police on Mr. Faust and saying he beat her up, and she gets arrested because there's witnesses saying no, it's the other way around. She was jumping on him. You're going to hear testimony from Ms. Swinney where she says, hey, Edrick hit me, and I beat him so bad I threw him into a DJ booth one time. Edrick took my car without permission. I went to his grandmother's house, and I beat him so bad he was trying to get me off of him, so he was scratching me, and other people had to come take me off of him. And she's going to give you multiple stories like that. But during this interview, it gets to a point where you'll see that this interview stops. And she says, hey, the worst thing I can say that Mr. Faust has done to me, he's hit me, and when the relationship is over and I'm with somebody else, he'll stop. He won't leave me alone. Police don't take that answer. When they didn't get this scandalous story from Ms. Swinney about how terrible of a person Mr. Faust is, and it's terrible by which your significant other, what they say is, a young lady has been killed, and we want to get justice for this young lady. And we know, he's a terrible guy, and he's done terrible things to you. And just like we want to get justice for this young lady, we also want to get justice for you too. And she says, wait guys, I don't know anything about a cold case. I don't know anything about the girl dying. All right, are you saying Edrick did it? Yes, we believe he did it. And Brenda, you were involved. You were with him at the time. And you'll see her, she misinterprets it. She said, what? How am I involved? And he says, well, Brenda, you were with them, so forth and so on. We've seen police reports with you too. And then she pauses for a second, and she says, Edrick used to force himself on me. And the officer says, oh, tell me more about that. Tell me more about it. And he says, did he punch you? She says, yeah, he punched me. Was he violent? Yeah, he was violent. When he would do this to you, was it vaginally, orally, anally? She said, or you hear her, she says, I don't know, for me, vaginally. Right? And they continue talking to Ms. Swinney. And it gets to a point, and they may present it, they may not present it, but I want you to know this is evidence that may come in this case. It gets to a point that Ms. Swinney is under so much pressure. And forgive me, I forgot the piece. Ms. Swinney tells law enforcement that she's had multiple strokes, by the way. So she's physically suffering, and she also says it affects her memory. But it gets to a point where they get Ms. Swinney so worked up, she says, y'all, God just gave me something. She said, I'm very biblical. She said, this one time, Edrick went to this house, and there was this girl, and I don't know what he did, and he set the house on fire. And they say, well, did he hurt the girl? She says, I don't know. Says, was anything taken? She says, yeah, he probably took a TV. He probably took it to his stepmother's house. The officer asks, well, how do you know this? Did he tell you? She says, he must have told me. I knew too much. And police at that moment, they don't take it like, oh my goodness, she may not be in the best space to talk, right? They continue talking to her. She tells them all types of fantastical stories. But what ends up occurring is, once I find out about Ms. Swinney's interview, and you'll hear this too, that's why I say it's two sides. I speak to Ms. Swinney. She comes to the court in front of the investigators that interviewed her, in front of the prosecutors, in front of Mr. Faust, in front of myself. And she says, you know, I felt like they led me into those answers. She says, the only thing that I can remember from my relationship with Mr. Faust is that there was one time that we had unconsensual sex, and it was not violent. The state will introduce Ms. Swinney not as evidence supporting that Mr. Faust committed these crimes against Ms. Baker, but to get you emotionally riled up. And that's why we chose you as jurors, because we believe that you will focus on the evidence. They are also going to bring in an individual by the name of Mr. Cedric Jeffers.
So there we go. Two witnesses that the defense expected the state to call that were not called by the state. Now there's a subpoena popping up for Brenda Swinney on the docket, even though it was served on the 7th. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But we've heard with the GBI witnesses, Cruz has been trying to get the information out there that if the state is arguing it's a crime of opportunity because of where the stepmother's home was located on Cooper Road in relation to where Tara and her roommates were staying, well, why were they ignoring, if that's so concrete to them, why do they have to ignore this other detail that they were aware of, that he had a girlfriend that he was living with, staying with, that didn't exactly live in that area that you'd call opportune. So seems like the defense maybe is gonna risk versus reward. And I mean, they did already tell the jury the worst of what they expect they would hear in relation to Brenda Swinney. So maybe they've got nothing to lose. Let's call her. Let's get this address thing situated. Who knows? But that's what I've got. No court today. Saw that subpoena hit the docket. Kind of seems a bit untimely if it was, again, January 7th. But there we are. And maybe see you guys tomorrow for court for Friday. If not, I'll post an update to you guys. Have a good one.